blind or do you stop pulling?
All right, Beats by Dre, Ciroc, Fenty Beauty. These are just some of the biggest brands hip-hop artists started. And today, hip-hop's influence is everywhere, from what you wear to what you drink and eat. But that wasn't always the case. Several companies shunned the genre in the beginning, a genre that is now a $16 billion industry with a B, so you heard me. Artists proved hip-hop is more than just music. It is a culture. They became trendsetters, giving shout-outs to brands and products in their lyrics. Others went on to start their own lucrative companies. Carlos Scott is a veteran PR and marketing executive at Envision Marketing, Inc. Over the last 2 decades, he has represented a number of multi-platinum and Grammy-winning artists. Pleasure to have you on Scripps News Live. And Carlos, hip-hop has been around for at least half a century, but when would you say commercial interest in the genre became serious? You say the 90s, maybe?
Definitely towards the 90s, actually beginning of the 80s as well, because you had people like Run DMC with their My Adidas tagline. And so that was, to me, I think one of the first kind of collaborations that was official.
How intertwined is hip hop in today's culture? Because when you mentioned that was kind of one of those first, big deals. At this point, I think we lose count of how many, business deals are coming through. So can you paint a picture of just the culture and business and how enmeshed that is?
I think they're very intertwined. When you look at it from someone who was, from Long Beach, California, like Snoop is now an international star, who's had collaborations with Martha Stewart. Who would have ever thought that, right?
Right.
And so you think people like Pharrell, Missy Elliott, and their business endeavors, Nicki Minaj, and Cardi B. I mean, a lot of these people aren't just business, just aren't entertainers, but they're also business and entrepreneurs. 50 Cent. The list goes on. And so the merging of corporate America. Cadillac has a new commercial with Big Boy from Outkast. And that's very synergetic because they've been talking about Cadillacs from the beginning of their careers in the early 90s.
That's so true. In preparing for this segment, and I'm a hip hop fan, I'll just come out and say it, and I just immediately thought of Jay-Z. And he always, he said, I'm not a businessman, I'm a business man, right? That's Jay-Z. And he's a billionaire. And then
Yes.
Rihanna, we know she said, you better have my money. She's a billionaire now. Can we talk about a little bit more that entrepreneurial spirit in hip hop, because it's very present, it's in the music, and then we see it come out in these companies. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh yes, as a marketing executive who collaborates and negotiates deals like this, you got to give kudos, especially to the women. Look at Lotto has a new endorsement with Wingstop, has her own signature line of wings. I mean, who would have thought, right? And then she's also, Sprite has a new commercial with her and Rakim and Nas celebrating the 50th anniversary. So I think the women are definitely being represented in hip hop way bigger than what maybe the public might give them credit for. MC Lyte, Queen Latifah. I mean, Queen Latifah's more than just a rapper. She's a mogul, and as well as a talented actress and singer.
Yeah, she's got her hands in so many different things, and I love that you shout that out. With that being said, is the entrepreneurial spirit within hip hop maybe changing given how much access artists have now to audiences? And you mentioned, kind of the sectors of business that they're getting into. This is not just clothing. You're mentioning, food products and being in television. And I mean, what do you think about all that?
Oh, you hit it right on. You could probably teach a class on this, it sounds like, right? You love hip hop, I can tell. And you look at, people like Isaac Hayes III, who has, pretty much championed hip hop from, all of his career, and now has fan base, where artists can actually collaborate with fan base to monetize their brands. And so when you look at how important Instagram, Twitter, TikTok even, and these artists are now able to release an album directly to their fans, to be perfectly honest, in some cases without even having distribution. You talk about, there's a kid out of Chicago that is, one of the biggest independent artists, but biggest artist period. Yeah. And he's independent.
Yeah, I mean, well, and it reminds me too, and now we have like the TikToks, but it was the SoundClouds, and people putting out mixtapes, and just, there was always that access, but it's just blown up at this point. Something I'm really curious about is, what is it about hip hop artists that make them so marketable, especially on a global stage? A lot of people think it's just the US. It's not. What do you think the point of connection is for businesses and then, these artists?
I think it's authenticity. Look at someone like Snoop, right? Snoop has been the same old Snoop since he first came out with his very first album. And I think artists, but more importantly fans, they resonate with artists who are true to themselves. And so when you look at a Kendrick Lamar, he's unapologetic about his talent, but as well as using his platform to do great things. I mean, the man won a Nobel Peace Prize for being himself. And so you look at brands who want to connect directly with these stars and their following, they're signing up more intentional, and they're being definitely more strategic about that. And so you have to give them credit, them as well as their agencies, for seeking the representation. Look at somebody like Diddy. Diddy started out as a background dancer, became an A&R executive, and now he's one of the richest, businessmen in the game.
The culture has influenced, our commercial markets, right? You see it in all these different kind of businesses. I'm curious for your perspective, how has the commercialization of hip hop affected the culture?
Well, think back when MC Hammer was at the height of his career, he actually got shunned for some of his business deals with, whether it was British Knights or dancing in a I think it was a Kentucky Fried Chicken commercial or whatever. But now these artists, they actually see this is a new revenue stream outside of their music. And so I think it is definitely, these artists now, they have an entrepreneurial spirit coming into the game that, to be perfectly honest, our generation, we just didn't. We were just, just trying to get on and have a record and
sell those records
and maybe buy a car for our mom or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But other than that, I think I really have to give kudos to these artists today.
They're coming in ready. Well, last question for you as we run short on time here. I could talk about this forever, but hip hop seems to have an influence, as I mentioned, in just about everything that we see. So what's next? How much further could this go?
There is no ceiling, to be perfectly honest. I watched a great documentary the other day highlighting the women of hip hop. And when you look at the evolution of how hip hop is infused in so many facets of our lives, no matter if you're black, if you're white, even country artists are aligning with hip hop artists, right? Nelly has songs with country artists, so I think there's no ceiling to the end.
No limit. Carlos Scott, thank you for joining me today, talking about this. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, we continue our celebration Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Our 1-hour special explores the history and evolution of hip hop. We'll dive into a transparent conversation about whether the music and culture needs to change. Join us Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern. And if you miss it, there's an encore presentation Sunday night at 9. Mark your calendars.